So in if statements, our motivation, we can control the logic of a program. Say, for example, for our radius program, when we're calculating the perimeter, we don't want a negative radius. That doesn't make any sense. So we want to check for that and adjust our program based on what they enter, right? So if we look at our radius program, when we calculated our perimeter and area, we have right here. But the user can enter in any type of radius. It can be negative, which we don't want, right? So if statements allow us to check for that. So an if statement, if this is true, do this, right? And in Java, there's something called a Boolean. Boolean is either true or false. And that's what the if statement is looking for, a Boolean expression. Before I do this example, I want to show you those. So it's either true or false, and these are the operators I could use to try to get that true or false. If statements are always looking for a true equation, right? It's always looking for a true Boolean. So we have less than or equal to, we have greater than or equal to, equal to, which you have to put two equal signs, or not equal to, which is an exclamation point and an equal sign. So now if we go back to our problem, I can do, we're trying to check to see if radius is less than 0. I want you to spit out radius cannot be less than 0. So if radius is less than 0.0, because it's a double, system.out.println radius cannot be less than 0. Right? So when I run this, of course, if I enter in a number, let's do this actually. If I enter a number above 0, right, the program goes here to the if statement. Well, this if statement is false, right? The radius I entered in is 54. So it's going to skip that and then go on about its business. Okay? However, if I do this again, and I type in a negative 54, now this if statement is true. So it's going to go inside that if statement, print this out, radius cannot be less than 0, and then continue about its business, right? Which is not necessarily what we want. Right? We don't want it to continue. We want it to stop after this, right? So in that case, we have something called an else statement, which if this is true, do this, else or otherwise, do this, right? So we do else, put all of this stuff inside that else statement, do that, okay? So again, if this is true, do this code. Else, do this code. So if this is false, go down to the else statement. The else is kind of the catch-all. So let's run this and look at what happens. Enter a radius. So let's do 54. That's above 0. So this if statement is false. So what's it going to do? It's going to jump down to my else statement and go about its business, right? Calculate the area. However, if I put in a negative 54, it's going to go to that if statement, which now it's true. So it's going to go inside the if statement, run this line, and then it's finished. It doesn't go to the else statement, okay? The else statement doesn't apply because we already did the if, and it's going to end the program, okay? Questions?
So you would just.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you. It's still broken up. If you could put it in the chat.
it's negative. So the problem would just stop if it's negative, or the program.
Yes, it will spit out. It will go to, if the number
So
is
like,
negative, if the number is negative, it's going to go inside this if statement. But since it went in the if statement, it doesn't need to calculate or do the else statement. So it's just going to skip to the end of the program. So like if I do this right here, if I put in a negative 14 right here, right? It goes to the if statement, goes inside that if statement, and that's it. It goes to the end of the program and it's done. However, if I put in a positive 14, it goes to the if statement, but that if statement is now false, right? Radius is greater than 0. So it goes to the else statement, which is the catch-all, and it does that right there. Versus what we had before, where you could enter in a negative number and it didn't do anything. Now we can control how our program responds based on that input. So if we look here, right, for our birth year, we don't want, and I'm going to change that to greater than 2020. If birth year is greater than 2020, you cannot be 0 years old. That doesn't work, right? That's another if statement for that problem. If they enter in a birth year that's over 2020, of course, you cannot be born in 2021, 2022, not yet anyway. So we want to account for that, right? We're checking to make sure that the birth year they entered is, in fact, a valid birth year.
So it's really just determining if something true or false.
Yes, that's all if statements are looking for. It's looking for a true or false in here. So technically, if I really wanted to, in some instances you do, I could just put if true, right? Which means that this if statement will always run every time. If I put if false, that means it's never going to go into that if statement. It's always going to go to the else. But in this circumstance, we want to check for something. So we want to check if radius is less than 0.0. If that's true, go in here. Else, if that's false, do this. Right, so you're always checking to see if whatever expression is in here is true or false. So again, we had our assignment 3 example. This is what we had. We add in that radius, right? Radius is less than 0.0. And if we walk through this, which we just did, we declare our variables, we prompt user for the radius, we create our scanner, we read in our double. Let's say, for example, the user enters a negative 14. If radius is less than 0.0, which it is, it's negative 14. Print out radius is less than 0. However, the program would continue because we don't have that else statement. So that's where they come in. The else statement allows us to change that logic to where the program continues down here, right? If they enter in a negative 14, what you see up here, radius equals negative 14, it goes into this statement and then ends the program, right? It doesn't execute what's occurring or what's written inside that else statement. We also have alternative if statements where we can have if this occurs, do this, else if, do this, and then our last one would be else, which is the catch-all. And you can have as many else if statements as you like. You could have 15 else if statements, and then an else, and then your main if, right? So if we go to our birth year example, right, what I want to do is, if birth year is greater than 20, greater than 2020, right, I want to print out you cannot be 0 years old, but also if age, right, we're calculating age, is less than or equal to 10, I want to print out young blood. If they're less than 50, you good? Else, which means that they're older than, if they're 50 or older, it's going to go into old head. All right, let's run this example. So this is what we had. This was our assignment 3, problem 2 code right here. So we have int age equals 2020 minus birth year. We read in birth year from the console. Well, let's go ahead and do this. Int age equals 0 by default, right? That's our default age. If birth year greater than 2020, system.out.println, you cannot be 0 years old. Else, let's calculate age equals to 2020 minus birth year, which is what we had. Age equals 2020 minus birth year. We don't need this statement anymore. So if I run this, right here, right, please enter your name and birth year. So let's do Bob. Bob was born in 2022, right, which is not possible right now. The program, it runs all of this and it stops right here at int age equals 0. We go down. If birth year is greater than 2020, which it is, we're going to go into this statement. It's going to print out you cannot be 0 years old, and it's going to continue printing this out, right? I didn't put this inside an else statement at all. I have it outside the else statement. Okay. However, if I put this inside that else statement, it kind of protects from that, right? It won't run that statement unless your birth year is less than 2020. So if I run this again, Bob was born in 2022 again, and age equals 0. Birth year is greater than 2020. System.out.println, you cannot be 0 years old, and then just ends the program, right? That's an input that we cannot use. If you were born over 2020, which cannot occur right now, then I want my program to stop, right? I don't want it to continue. Well, let's say I put this down here. Since we set age equal to 0, we can do if age is less than or equal to 10, system.out.println young blood. Else if age is less than 50, system.out.println you good. Else, which is our catch-all, system.out.println old head. Right? All right, so let's run this program again. Let's see what happens. Let's say Bob, let's do 2022 again. Right? It goes down to if birth year is greater than 2020, it is. You cannot be 0 years old. It's going to print that out. But then it's going to go to my next if statements. If age is less than or equal to 10, it's going to, yes it is, because age is set to 0 right now. Young blood, and then it finishes. Okay, I set age equal to 0 by default. That's the default age. If I put in a valid birth year, that age will change. So let's try that. Bob was born in 1994. Let's do 1994. All right. Birth year is greater than 2020? No, that's false. So we go into our else statement. Age equals 2020 minus birth year. Let's print out our age. Bob is 26. Is age less than or equal to 10? No. Is age less than 50? Yes. So we go here. You good. We end our program. Let's try a different example. Bob was born in 1920. All right. Birth year greater than 2020? No. So we go to our else. Bob is 100 years old. Is he less than or equal to 10? No. Is he less than 50? No. So we go to our catch-all. We print out old head, and we end. Right? But the issue is, when we put in a Bob was born in 2022, do we really want it to still say Youngblood? That's an improper input, right? You cannot be 0 years old. We don't want that. So we go through this example. This is the one we just did, right? Rename, age. Age, if they put in 1990, that means it's okay. It goes to the else statement. We calculate their age, right? 1990, 2020 minus 1990 is 20 years old. It's 30 years old. Yeah, 30 years old. So we go to the else if statement because it's greater than 10, but less than 50, and we print out you good. The issue is, if I put in a number that's greater than 2020, the program still prints out you cannot be 0 years old, but the program continues to the next statements. So we have something called a nested if. We can put this if statement, all this down right here, inside that else statement. So it only runs if a valid birth year is entered, right? So if we look here, I can take all this code right here and put it inside that else statement. That way it only runs if a valid birth year is entered, right? So let's do this. Output. Bob was born in 2022 again. So we do if birth year is greater than 2020, which it is. We go down into that if statement. You cannot be 0 years old. And then the program finishes. It doesn't run that other code. However, if I put in a valid birth year, 1994, it goes to the if statement, but that if statement is now false, so it goes to the else. Age equals 2020 minus birth year. Sending that out to age. Bob is 26 years old. And it goes down into these following if, else if, and else. You good. Any questions? If statements, else if statements, any logical expression questions? So I did less than or equal to 10, but right here I did less than 50. Right? So if you're 50 exactly, it's going to go to that else statement. And I'll show you that right here. So Bob was born in 1970. Right? I continue through this. Bob is 50. So that if statement is false right here. This one is false because that's not less than 50. It's exactly equal to it. So it's still going to go to the old head. Okay? So that's less than equal to. Again, we have equal equal, which Bob was born in 1970. We go here. That's equal to 50, right? So we would go in here. You good. But my original program had this right here, less than 50. Okay? Any questions about if, else if, and else, and nested if statements? If you have any questions, please let me know because this will stack on itself. If statements are some of the beginning things we'll learn. So I need you to understand this for any future assignments. Matter of fact, your assignment and your lab will use if statements. So I don't want you to wait until the weekend to ask me the questions if you can ask me now in class.